Hi, Walter. Thanks for having me on.
It's a great pleasure. We had a lot of fun talking with you. Folks can look that up in their iHeartRadio app as well. The past interview we had with you before the convention was very informative, and it was great getting to know your views and getting to know you. Now we're talking under vastly different circumstances. What's your reaction? It's kind of a two-part question. What's your reaction to the chaos we've seen in the DFL over the past few days, and how specifically has the entry of Keith Ellison reshaped this race for Attorney General?
Right. Well, it's very interesting. We've kind of got the DFL dumpster fire going on with all the different candidate filings and people shuffling around. Lori Swanson jumping the governor's race, and then Keith Ellison jumping into the AG race along with others. But it's really an extreme team of partisan leftists that the Democrats have fielded for the Attorney General's race, and Ellison is just sort of leading the pack. But they're all very, very far left. Deborah Hillstrom, Mike Rothman. These are out of touch. All these people are out of touch with Minnesotans.
There's a piece that I just found right before coming on the air in my inbox from Action for Liberty. They talk about the entry of Keith Ellison into the race. And this was really the spark that got me to make that claim that Ellison is one of those people that you got to pause and actually recall all the myriad of ways in which he's just not in sync with, forget about our values as Republicans, just general American values.
Right.
They write, it's hard to imagine what could be worse for Minnesota than a radical socialist with former ties to the Nation of Islam becoming the top law enforcement officer in Minnesota. Lest we forget, that's what Attorney General is. Yesterday, Keith Ellison opted to not run again for Congress and threw his name in the hat for Attorney General in November. Now, there's a piece at MinnPost that I might get into later where they speculate. Well, they don't speculate. They interview Ellison. And his articulated reason for, because this is quite remarkable, to step down from Congress and to step down from the prominent national position he has in the DNC in order to be a state attorney general could be characterized as a lateral move or worse. But the reason he wants to do so, according to his own mouth, is because he wants to fight Donald Trump.
That's right. Right. It's really remarkable. So first of all, you've got a guy that worked for the Nation of Islam for 18 months. He dined with Louis Farrakhan as recently as 2013 when Iran's President Rouhani was visiting the United States to address the United Nations. This guy he has terrible associations with terrible people. He's an anti-Semite, right? He's a socialist. He's so far left. It's unbelievable. And now he's specifically running for Attorney General just to obstruct the president's agenda.
And explicitly saying it. Explicitly saying that that's his reason for doing it.
Right. So he just wants to politicize the office further, right? He just wants to take the AG's office and use it for entirely political purposes, which I guess is sort of carrying on the tradition that Lori Swanson and Mike Hatch and the Democrats have been carrying along for 48 years of just politicizing the office, but he's going to take it to a whole new level.
Yeah, let's talk about that just for a second. We'll come back to Ellison. Lori Swanson, bowing out of the contention for endorsement after the first ballot when she was ahead. This is just bizarre. And then deciding that she's going to run for governor, it kind of, to my mind, confirms what we talked about the last time we had you on the program, which is that Democrats just view this office of Attorney General as a launching platform for being governor, and that's she was going to have that she was going to go for that brass ring, hook or crook.
Yeah, that's right. It just seems to be a political stepping stone for them, and she lost the faith of her party. She pulled out of the endorsement. She must have seen that she was going to lose the endorsement after she didn't win on the first ballot, and then she pulled out. And the Democrats took a sharp left turn and endorsed Matt Pelican, who's got just a few years of experience as a lawyer and is even further to the left than Lori Swanson. But then she's jumped into the governor's race. It doesn't make a lot of sense, except it does demonstrate that the Democrats see the Attorney General's office as nothing more than a political stepping stone and not the law enforcement office that it is.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Ellison intends to use it for. This from MinnPost. After he filed his paperwork to run for Attorney General at the state capitol on Tuesday, Ellison spoke with MinnPost and outlined his vision for the Attorney General job. He called it a people's lawyer who holds people in power accountable to make sure the average person has a fair shot. Now, that's you could take that and say, oh, that's neutral, nice sounding language, but then he gets into the specifics. He says, as Attorney General, you get to enforce the law and you get to make sure that powerful follow the rules. There's some things a member of Congress can't do. You cannot take immediate action to protect rights of people. A member of Congress can introduce legislation, try to make the law better, but an Attorney General can very pragmatically sue to make sure people's credit card companies are not taking advantage of them. This doesn't sound like a new use of the office from Democrats to me. This sounds like more of the same.
Yeah, it is more of the same. I mean, it is important to enforce our consumer fraud laws, but the Democrats do that to the exclusion of everything else.
That's right.
Gutted the criminal law division of the office, leaving our county attorneys without the resources they need to prosecute criminals and put criminals behind bars. They focus on just the consumer fraud piece, and then whatever they can do to block the president's agenda. Lori Swanson sued the president a number of times already to block the travel ban. She also sued the president more recently to prevent him from putting a question on the census that asks about citizenship. So it's just going to be more of the same, more politicization of the office. Apparently Ellison intends to ignore all of the very important duties of the office as a law enforcement office.
We're talking with Doug Wardlow, the Republican-endorsed candidate for Attorney General here in the state of Minnesota. You can learn more about his campaign at DougWardlowAG.com. A couple of ways in that we know without any doubt that Keith Ellison will not enforce the law as he pretends to be aspiring to do. One is in immigration. Now, regardless of where you think the immigration law ought to be, currently we have a law that's on the books. And again, referencing this email here from Action for Liberty, if you want the Attorney General enforcing our immigration laws, you can bet money that Ellison won't do it. On May Day this year, Ellison marched in a parade wearing a shirt that called for the elimination of our nation's borders. I remember that because we talked about that here on the program.
It's preposterous. I mean, he doesn't believe in borders. He wants anarchy at the borders. We just can't trust him as our top law enforcement official in the state.
And another area in which he absolutely will not enforce the law is when it comes to the anarchy in the streets of Antifa. Again, from Action for Liberty. Ellison also made news recently for tweeting out a picture with a manual for the law-breaking group Antifa. Minnesota has had its issues already with prosecuting lawbreakers disguised as protesters. One could only imagine what radical, violent leftist groups will get away with under Ellison's tenure. And they got the picture here of Ellison with a smile in front of the Antifa anti-fascist handbook, which, of course, is red, which is totally appropriate, right?
Right. I mean, he's just going to look the other way, right? He's just going to look the other way when they're up to their nonsense. And we can't have that. So he's against law and order. He's against the rule of law. He just wants to take that office to do political things, block the president's agenda, and then probably he's looking at higher office after that.
Yeah, it sounds like that's exactly the playbook here. So, going forward, you are, I believe, unopposed in the primary. Is that correct?
Got a couple opponents, but no serious opposition that we can.
Okay. Yeah, the fact that I had to ask the question indicates how serious the opponents are.
Right, exactly. Right.
And the presumption is, do you have a presumption in terms of whether or not Ellison is going to survive his primary? Because he's got quite a few people, it looks like, that are
I don't know. I mean, he's got some competition on his hands, but he's got, pretty strong national following and probably a considerable war chest. So I think that he has a good shot at prevailing. Now, that being said, he's just one of 4 Democrat candidates. All of them are extreme leftists, and all of them will continue the politicization of the office and use it for the improper purposes. None of them are going to reinvigorate the criminal law division or do any of the things that we've talked about, crack down on child care and welfare fraud, lift the burden of regulations off of businesses. They're not going to do that.
Yeah, one of the things I noticed in the reporting from the Star Tribune on Lori Swanson's failure to secure endorsement on the first ballot is one of the reasons why the guy who did secure that endorsement, how do you pronounce his name? Pelican?
Yeah, I believe so.
Pelican. This guy, part of his case for why he should be the endorsed candidate for Attorney General over Lori Swanson was, quote, a progressive leader does not have an A+ rating from the NRA. Now, So what the Democrats are basically telling us right now is that if you own a gun and if you care about securing your rights to continue owning it and using it in a law-abiding, rights-respecting manner, there's no place for you in the Democratic Party.
That's exactly what he's saying, and that's what the Democrats are saying. He's going to come after people's guns. He's not going to support our Second Amendment rights as Attorney General.
Yeah, and apparently Lori Swanson was too far to the right on the Second Amendment for the status quo of the DFL, which really calls into question the events of the past few days. You know, people were talking about making Minnesota red going into the convention weekend, and, you know, you expect that from partisan rhetoric, but
Right.
It's looking genuinely possible right now.
Things are looking very good. Things are looking up. You know, I think what it really comes down to is the Democrats have embraced this, you know, identity politics and celebrity politics to such an extent that they have lost their own identity as a party, and they really don't have anything of substance to offer. They're just grasping for power and trying to promote themselves in any way they can. That's why you see this dumpster fire of candidates jumping into these different offices and playing musical chairs, trying to, angle for the best possible chance to propel themselves and get that power to do the things that they want to do and push things to the left in this state. So, but they don't have anything of substance really to offer.
Doug Wardlow, Republican-endorsed candidate for Attorney General. Again, you can find out more about his campaign at DougWardlowAG.com. Thanks for joining us on Closing Argument tonight.
Thank you so much, Walter.
Appreciate having you. 651-989